The train crawled into the small station just after sunset, its windows trembling with the last echoes of metal and war still clinging to the man inside. He stepped down slowly, boots worn thin, shoulders heavy with a silence he had carried across oceans. The town looked familiar, yet distant, as if someone had taken the memory of it and dimmed the colors. He had imagined this return 1,000 times during sleepless nights in Vietnam, but now the air felt colder than he remembered. He walked home with the careful steps of a man who no longer trusted the world beneath him. Every porch light, every barking dog, every passing glance stirred something inside that never fully settled. He rehearsed her smile in his mind, the one thing he believed had survived the war with him, the one thing that kept him tethered. But when he reached the house, he saw a car parked where his should have been. Its polished surface reflected the glow of the living room lamp. Through the window, he caught the outline of two figures, hers unmistakable, leaning close to a man he'd never seen. She wasn't crying, she wasn't startled, she was laughing, soft and warm, the way she used to laugh with him before the world turned him into someone he didn't recognize. He stood frozen on the porch, listening to her voice drift through the thin walls. Something inside him cracked, quiet but deep, like old wood giving way. He knocked, because discipline was the one thing he still had. She opened the door, and her smile died before it reached her eyes. The other man rose behind her, awkward, apologetic, unsure of where to place his hands. He didn't shout, he didn't ask why. He simply watched her, trying to find the woman he had carried in memory through gunfire and nightmares. But the distance between them had grown too wide, carved by months of silence and fear. She tried to speak, but the words dissolved before touching him. The room felt smaller by the second, closing around the three of them, suffocating. When he left the house, he carried nothing but the echo of their voices. He walked with no destination, only the relentless pounding of his heart guiding him. He felt as if the war had followed him home, had stepped off the plane with him, had walked beside him all the way to his own front door. The betrayal wasn't just hers, it was the betrayal of time, of hope, of everything he'd fought to return to. He reached the old riverbank where he used to fish as a boy. The world around him blurred, the sky sagging with clouds that seemed unable to hold their weight. He sat on the cold ground, hands shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion, an exhaustion that went deeper than bone. The weapon he carried, kept out of habit more than intention, felt heavier than it ever had in war. He thought of the nights under enemy fire, of friends buried in foreign soil, of promises whispered into the dark. He thought of her face on the porch, not cruel, just distant, as though she had lived an entirely different life in his absence. He realized he no longer knew where he belonged, not in the war, not in the world he had returned to, not even within himself. He lifted the gun because he could not lift the weight inside him. He did not curse the world or blame anyone. He simply closed his eyes and sought silence, real silence, not the kind that haunted him. And in a single, irreversible moment, he surrendered to it. His wife found him hours later, drawn by a feeling she couldn't name, a pull rooted somewhere between regret and love that had outlasted her courage. When she saw him lying there by the water, everything inside her collapsed. The man beside her, the one she had turned to in her loneliness, suddenly felt like a stranger she had led into a sacred place. She knelt beside her husband, touching his face with hands that shook violently. Memories rushed through her, his patience, his laughter before the war, the way he held her as if she were the only certainty he had. She realized then that she had underestimated the scars he carried, the battles he still fought long after coming home. She realized she had lost him long before this moment, and she had never learned how to call him back. Her grief spiraled into something sharp, something that left no room for breath. She picked up the gun, not out of punishment or escape, but out of a desperate need to follow the man she had loved in ways she never managed to show. The world around her dimmed, the river whispering softly, as if urging her to reconsider. But the distance between her past and her present had become too wide. She stepped into the same silence he had chosen, her final act, a confession without words. By morning, the riverbank was still again. The world kept spinning, unaware of the two souls who had faltered under the weight of war, love, loss, and the cruel passage of time. And in that stillness, their story lingered, a reminder that battles do not end when soldiers come home, and that hearts can be wounded in ways no uniform can protect. The town would remember them not for their final moments, but for the fragile hope they once held, a hope that flickered bravely against the darkness until it could no longer endure.